Okay, let's unpack this. You know that moment when you're learning English,
Uh-huh.
the perfect phrase, it just pops in your head, you know exactly what you want to
Yeah,
say.
you got it lined up.
But then, when it's actually time to speak, your mind just slams shut, completely blank.
Right, it's like hitting a wall.
Your brain hits the emergency brake, maybe your palms get a little sweaty, and suddenly you're doubting every single English word you know.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. That sounds very familiar to a lot of learners.
It does, right? Trust me, that feeling it's practically a universal badge of honor for English learners.
And what's really interesting here, and kind of the crucial point, is that this hesitation you feel, it isn't usually about a lack of English knowledge itself.
Really? So it's not just needing more words.
More often than not, it actually stems from a lack of speaking practice.
Yeah.
And that directly hits your confidence.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're digging into today. We've got
Okay.
some really helpful material here that it really cuts to the chase about building that vital speaking confidence in English.
Okay.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. To really understand why speaking confidently can feel so, well, surprisingly difficult.
And more importantly,
And more importantly, yeah, to pull out some concrete, actionable steps that can genuinely help you build that confidence.
so moving beyond just studying the rules.
Exactly. It's about shifting from passively knowing English to actively, using it comfortably without that big fear holding you back.
Makes sense. So where do we start? Why is it such a hurdle?
Yeah, let's get straight to it. Why is speaking confidently such a big deal for so many English learners? It's not just about mastering grammar rules, is it?
Precisely. The resources we looked at, they really highlight that the core issue often boils down to a very fundamental human emotion: fear.
Fear. Okay.
Yeah, think about all the different sides of it. The fear of making mistakes,
Oh, definitely.
the anxiety of being judged by other people, worrying you don't sound right, or even just the fear of not understanding someone.
Or not being understood yourself,
Exactly. All that stuff.
right? It's like having this tiny critical voice just nagging you constantly. And what happens when you feel afraid? You tense up, right?
You absolutely do. That fear triggers a kind of pressure response.
Oh.
And when you're under that pressure, your brain doesn't really operate at its best.
Okay.
It becomes much harder to access the vocabulary and the grammar structures you actually already know. It's like a mental roadblock.
So the fear itself blocks the fluency.
It directly impedes your ability to speak fluently, yeah.
And it's so important to remember this isn't just like an intellectual thing. As our source points out, speaking a language carries a lot of emotional weight.
That's a really key insight.
So if you find yourself feeling nervous or self-conscious, maybe even frustrated when you try to speak English, it doesn't automatically mean you're bad at it.
Right. It's not an indicator of your actual ability.
It's much more likely that you just haven't been equipped with the right strategies for building that specific speaking confidence.
That's a really important distinction. Often, language learning focuses so heavily on the mechanics, vocab lists, grammar drills,
The building blocks.
which are essential, of course, but the emotional side, the psychological aspect of actually using the language confidently, that often gets overlooked.
Okay, so fear is a major player here.
Yeah.
Got it. But let's flip that. What's the real key to unlocking that speaking confidence? Because I think a lot of learners believe they need perfect English first.
Yeah, that's a super common misconception, and it's understandable, but the material we reviewed is very clear on this.
Which is?
You absolutely do not need perfect English to speak confidently. What you need is practiced English.
Practiced English, not perfect. I like that distinction.
Real, spoken, lived-in English.
So it's not mainly about just memorizing more and more words.
Not as the main driver for confidence, no. According to these sources, confidence builds from actually using the vocabulary and phrases you already know.
Using what you've got.
Repeatedly, until they become almost automatic. Think of it like building familiarity, maybe even muscle memory for your speech.
Like typing. You don't think about where the keys are eventually.
Exactly like typing. With enough repetition, the movements just happen, right? And it frees up your conscious mind. Speaking works similarly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Ah!
It's like learning any other practical skill, isn't it? The source uses a great analogy, learning to ride a bike.
Yeah, that's a good one. You don't become a cycling pro by just reading the manual cover to cover.
No way.
You have to actually get on the bike. You wobble. You might take a tumble or two.
Definitely.
But you keep practicing, and eventually you don't even consciously think about balancing anymore. You just ride.
And speaking English follows the same idea.
The very same principle. The more you actually engage in the act of speaking, the more natural it starts to feel.
Hmm.
And that's where real confidence comes from.
Okay, so practice, practice, practice is the foundation.
Mhm.
But how do we actually, build that into our daily lives?
Right, the practical steps.
Exactly. Our source gives us a fantastic step-by-step guide for this. Let's walk through those. The first one is called shadowing. What's that about?
Shadowing is it's a really effective technique. Basically, you take short audio or video clips of native English
Like
speakers.
from a podcast or the news?
Yeah, or a short video, anything like that. And you listen, and then you immediately repeat exactly what you hear out loud.
Okay, just repeating the words.
Well, not just the words. The crucial part is really focusing on mimicking their tone, their pace, even the rhythm and the intonation, the melody of their speech.
Ah, so you're actively trying to sound like them.
Precisely. And the source material explains why this works so well. You're essentially training the physical muscles in your mouth and throat.
For the sounds, right?
Your ears to pick up on those subtle nuances and your brain to connect it all. It helps you move beyond just guessing how things should sound.
So it feels more natural.
Exactly. You start producing it more naturally instead of just intellectually figuring it out.
That sounds really active, actually. Okay, next step. This one seems almost too simple, but maybe it's powerful. Speak every day.
It might sound simple, yeah, but consistency here is absolutely key. The source really highlights that even just 5 minutes a day, every day, speaking English can make a big difference over time.
5 minutes? That
Uh,
sounds doable. But does it have to be a conversation?
Not necessarily, no. It doesn't require a formal chat with someone else.
So what can someone do for 5 minutes, practically speaking, if they don't have a partner handy?
Well, talking to yourself is actually a great start.
Really, like narrating your life.
Yeah. Describe what you're doing or thinking or what you see around you. Another idea from the source is to just verbally recap your day in English.
Okay.
Or you could try recording yourself speaking for just a short burst. The main goal here is simply getting comfortable hearing your own voice in English.
Ah, desensitizing yourself to it.
Exactly, and reducing that fear or self-consciousness just through repeated exposure, making it feel normal.
That makes perfect sense. Just normalizing the act of speaking. Okay, step 3 is one I think a lot of learners really need to hear. Stop aiming for perfection.
Oh, this is such a critical point. Perfectionism can be a huge confidence killer.
Totally.
And the source rightly points out, even native English speakers make mistakes all the time.
Right. We forget words. We use fillers like and
Exactly. Fluency isn't about being flawless. It's fundamentally about communicating your ideas clearly.
So the goal is getting the message across, not achieving grammatical perfection every single time.
Precisely. The source encourages you, the learner, to give yourself permission to make mistakes. See them as just steps in the process.
Not failures.
Not failures at all, integral parts of learning. It's about celebrating the progress you do make, however small it feels, instead of chasing this impossible ideal of perfection.
That feels really freeing, actually. Okay, the next technique. Learn phrases, not just words. Why is that so helpful for sounding smoother?
This is a great strategy for sounding more fluid and natural, instead of just memorizing single words.
Like flashcards for individual items.
Right. The idea is to learn entire chunks of language, common phrases that native speakers use all the time in conversation.
Can you give an example?
Sure, the source mentions ones like, that's a good idea, or I've never thought about it that way, or let me explain what I mean, things like that.
Okay, so you learn the whole chunk.
Exactly. So instead of having to mentally build those sentences, word by painful word,
Which is where you often freeze up.
precisely, you have these pre-made building blocks ready to go in your memory. It cuts down those awkward pauses and lets your speech flow much more smoothly.
It stops the freeze because you have something ready.
You have these common expressions right there, immediately available. Yeah.
That sounds super practical, like it could really help in the moment. Okay, step 5 is, well, it might sound a bit out there for some people. Visualize success.
Right. This one taps into psychology a bit more. It involves consciously taking a moment before you need to speak English, maybe before a meeting or just joining a conversation.
What do you do in that moment?
The source suggests you pause, maybe close your eyes, and actually picture yourself speaking clearly, confidently, effectively.
Like a mental rehearsal, seeing yourself nail it.
Exactly that. And while it might seem a little abstract, the psychological impact can actually be pretty significant.
How so?
By vividly imagining yourself succeeding, Your brain starts to kind of believe it's possible. This mental prep can lead to a calmer state, more focus, a more positive mindset when you actually start talking.
Which then boosts your confidence in how you perform.
It absolutely can. It primes you for success.
That's fascinating, the mind-body connection there. Okay, and the final step, which the source calls a game changer,
Yes.
is record yourself speaking. Now that sounds potentially uncomfortable.
It definitely can feel a bit awkward at first, no doubt, but the potential payoff is huge.
So how does it work?
The source suggests picking a simple topic like your last holiday or what you do every morning, something easy, and record yourself talking about it for maybe just 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. Then what?
Then, and this is the really crucial part, you listen back to the recording.
Ooh, yeah. That's the cringe factor, potentially.
It might be, but the source emphasizes what an invaluable chance it is to objectively notice your own pronunciation, your intonation, the overall flow.
Things you might not notice while you're actually speaking.
Exactly. While it feels weird at first, this practice lets you pinpoint specific areas you could improve in a very concrete way.
And seeing improvement must build confidence.
Absolutely. As you work on those things and you actually hear the positive changes over time, it gives you a real sense of accomplishment, pride even, and that builds lasting confidence.
That makes total sense, like creating your own feedback loop. Very motivating. Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the main message for listeners wanting to speak English more confidently?
I think the fundamental takeaway is you don't have to wait. You don't need to postpone speaking until some imaginary future point when your English feels perfect.
Start now.
You can actively start building confidence right now just by doing it, by speaking. It's about committing to small, consistent daily practice.
Even 5 minutes.
Even 5 minutes. And accepting that mistakes aren't just okay, they're actually essential. They're part of the process.
So confidence isn't like an on-off switch.
Not at all. The source uses that great analogy. It's like a muscle.
Ah, right.
Every time you use it, even in small ways, it gets gradually stronger, more reliable.
So the advice is basically just go for it. Speak English as if it's already yours.
And act your way into feeling confident.
And by doing that, it becomes more and more natural over time.
Absolutely. You really can do this. It's about building that fluency, one confident word, one confident phrase at a time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the core message really is clear. Confidence in spoken English, it isn't some magic talent you're born with.
No, it's a skill.
It's a skill you actively build through consistent practice and maybe just as importantly, by shifting your mindset.
Right. Moving away from that fear of mistakes and really just embracing the whole learning journey, bumps and all.
Exactly.
And maybe the most empowering thought for you, the listener, to take away is this. Pick just one small step, just one thing from all the techniques we talked about.
Yeah.
Maybe try that 5-minute shadowing session tomorrow morning. Or perhaps later today, make that quick 1-minute recording of yourself talking about your day. Something small.
And just see how it feels.
Yeah. And take a moment to think about how even these tiny acts of speaking, done consistently, can start building up that sense of confidence bit by bit over time.